Riveting content. Empowering your life. Welcome to the Sphere. This episode is sponsored by
Sphere Exclusives. Looking for exclusive content from your favorite podcasts here at the Sphere? Head over to sphere.tv/Patreon and sign up today. True Digital Media Consulting. You're online right now and so are your customers, but marketing has to be a consistent journey. True Digital Media Consulting can help with your online ads, organic growth, and so much more. Contact us today at 832-934-4436 or visit our website at truedigitalmediaconsulting.com. Lady Ari Natural Hair Care. Lady Ari Natural Hair Care has been a prime destination for catering to naturally kinky hair in Houston, Texas. Give the experts a call today at area code 832-265-3792 or book online at ladyari.com.
Another amazing edition of Society Now. You know it's Saturday. It's a special Saturday because I was talking without the mic. Amazing. Thank you for joining us for another amazing edition of Society Now, where we strive to bring you riveting content that inspires, excites, and cultivates some action in your neighborhood, in your city, in your section, in your county, in your wherever you are. My name is Kira Laws, and you can follow me on Instagram at the Modern Day Cindy. That's Cindy with an I, not a Y. Always imitated, never duplicated. To my left, my extreme left, the handsome, ever so amazing.
What's happening? It's your man Kayla Laws, a.k.a. Senor Wapo. Do me a quick favor. Go to Instagram. Go to Twitter. Go to Facebook and type in SENORGUAP0713. We certainly appreciate you tuning in each and every week to Society Now. We have hashtag Real Talk, Real Facts, No Fake News. I certainly hope that you all are excited about kicking it with us. Listen, let's just dive right in. There have been a number of things going on in the news, more specifically regarding this thing called higher education. So Kira and I, we are both proponents of higher education, right? She has like 17 degrees. I got like 11. You know what I'm saying? And so, no, not really, but we've been to school a few times, and we believe in the power of higher education. We don't believe that it is for everyone. I think that's a conversation that we don't have enough in our community. We push college on our young folks, and it's not for everyone. And sometimes you push them into a situation, right, where they shouldn't be. And thus they're not successful, and they wasted time, they wasted money, etc. But for those folks who are successful and who are have a predisposition for higher education, it can be a valuable tool, right? For career development, for personal development, for relational development, for all kinds of development. It can be a phenomenal tool for that. And so I think America recognizes that, right? We push higher ed on our students, we push college readiness, we push going to some sort of trade program, some sort of formal education in a post-secondary capacity. Well, it's kind of the American way. We're the most educated workforce, the most educated populace in terms of workforce in the country, or not in the country, in the world rather. And that comes with a price, Kira. It comes with a price. It comes with a price of tuition. It comes with a price of room and board. It comes with a price of meal plans with these doggone books that be $6,000 for a semester worth of books. It feels like, it comes with a price, right? But that price has gotten even a bit more steep in recent years. More specifically, we found out that there is an alleged $25 million. That's a big price. College admissions cheating scheme that has befallen a bunch of celebrities and everybody else, Kira. I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy. So what we're finding out is amongst this alleged cheating scheme, this college scandal, it was a 10-month-long FBI investigation, which resulted in charges being filed against 50 people, 33 of which are parents, and actresses Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman were part of the scam. Now, which makes this really interesting that it actually started with an investigation into something else that opened up or led to this, and the person who's behind it, I think his name is Rick. Is that his name? Well, anyways, once they figured out what was going on with this scam, he actually agreed to help the FBI bust the story. He said he's absolutely the cause of it. So the scam was aimed to get students admitted into elite universities as recruited athletes, even if they didn't play sports, or help students cheat or outsource their standardized exams tested, which means that they would pay testing centers to allow someone else to sit in and take a test for the person just so they can get a good grade. And or when they applied to school as someone that they were not, like an athlete. They would even post pictures. They would cut and paste, Photoshop, if you will, pictures of the person's face onto this, like them in athletic gear. Just inflating who these people really were. Some parents paid upwards of $200,000. Lori Loughlin was willing to pay up to $500,000 to get her kids into USC. Felicity Huffman was said to have paid $15,000 to ensure that their child had more time or unlimited time to take these standardized testing. And so this creates issues because a lot of people are feeling like that is unfair, and it calls into question, are the people that are in these schools people that should be in these schools, or are they only there because of money? What do you think about that, Caitlin?
Listen to me. What do I think about that? Man, cheaters never win, right? I mean, God, it's so tiered. It's so. First of all, I want to know how the brother who was doing all of this, how he got it done, how far reaching is because. In what way can you guarantee admission? Like, who else are you greasing?
So he's considered the mastermind. He orchestrated a scam. His name is William Rick Singer. He's the founder of Edge College and Career Network, LLC, also called The Key. Okay? That's the key.
It's a key, all right.
Okay. He said he's absolutely responsible for it. He told the district judge on Tuesday he put everything in place. He put all the people in place, and he made payments directly to all the people. He said Singer pleaded guilty to charges of racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering. Oh, I mean, this is serious, y'all. Conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of justice. He could be sentenced to a maximum of 65 years in prison. Now, whether he actually gets that, we're not sure. He's 58 years old, right? I think it's 58.
Yeah. 58.
Okay. But he said from 2011 up until last month, parents said Singer accumulated about $25 million to bribe coaches and university administrators to designate their children as recruited athletes. He has also helped provide, listen to this, 761 families with side doors for admission.
That's crazy.
761 families with side doors for admission. Do you know what that means, Kaylin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's 761 families is an interesting thing, because that's 761 people who have access to a quality education, and I use to a quality education on a private school level, who otherwise would not have gotten in. I mean, gosh, that's so terrible. So you have kids all around the country. 761 students who may not have gotten in. Well, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that to be clear. You have the 761 students who did get in because of working with the Key, with this Key LLC, got in. But it displaces 761 students, and it displaces maybe even more, because when you look at college funding, sometimes you get full rides, partial rides, etc. And so one full ride could take the place of two half or part-time scholarships, right? Or admissions placements. So it's very, very difficult, and it's very, very it's one of those things that I think that we have to be aware of, because for years, affirmative action has taken a hit, right? For years, affirmative action has taken this. People have had such a difficult or a hard or an unfavorable stance against it, and now we're seeing why it's necessary, right? We're seeing why it's necessary, but there's also something else that's necessary, and that's that we talk to you about our Sphere exclusive team. This portion of the show is sponsored by the Sphere exclusive team. Now, are you looking for exclusive content that you cannot find anywhere else? Well, look no further than our Sphere exclusives found only on Patreon. We've got behind-the-scenes shots happening daily at the Sphere Podcast Studios. Each show on this podcast network curates episodes that are only delivered to Patreon subscribers. Plus, we deliver the show live from start to finish in our Discord server that's exclusive to our Patreon family. Sign up today at www.thesphere.tv/Patreon to join the $2, $5, and or $8 Patreon tier and get access to all of the exclusive content we offer at the Sphere. So go ahead and check us out exclusively. Now back to this college admissions scandal. So when you look at what's going on with affirmative action, the history of affirmative action was actually started and benefited white women before it did anybody else, any other ethnic group. Well, now you have this idea where a lot of students are getting into schools. A lot of folks are getting jobs. A lot of people are getting governmental assistance or getting some sort of placement into organizations based upon a segregatory idea that is from affirmative action. In fact, when affirmative action was really lauded and well, not lauded, but was really being, what's the word I'm looking for, discussed significantly back in 2016 with the young lady from the University of Texas who filed a lawsuit against the University of Texas for not getting admission. You know, Clarence Thomas weighed in on it, saying that we shouldn't look at policies based upon racial segregation, and that's true, we shouldn't. But we have to remember that affirmative action is trying to right a wrong where a government has levied policies against minorities, whether it's black folks, whether it's indigenous people, Native Americans, whether it's the Latinx community. It doesn't matter. Those policies have affected us in such a difficult way that, you know, it's trying to right the wrong. It's trying to give it some equity, some parity, if you will. And so even Clarence Thomas was like, you know, we shouldn't, it's wrong. And Justice Scalia, before he wasn't able to render a verdict on it, and they supported this idea with University of Texas, saying back in 2016, saying that you know, their policy of letting the top 10% of every, or the top two, I forget, it's the top students of every class in every school. I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. The top student of every school gets automatic admission. Mm-hmm. And often, and this is in the University of Texas system, especially specifically University of Texas at Austin, the Longhorns, the big school. Mm-hmm. And more specifically, the lawsuit says that, or alleges that there are students who have higher GPAs at other schools who didn't graduate at the top of their class, so they are denied admission. This is what the lawsuit was saying, right? And so now people are saying, okay, this is why they need these kinds of what the key does. Yeah, it alleges it, and then so Justice Clarence Thomas, you know, he dissented against it, even though his the decision was 3-4, I believe, supporting this policy by the University of Texas, which is a form of affirmative action. This is an affirmative action policy. And so when you look at what's going on with Key LLC in the college admission scandal, people are saying that they're trying to right a wrong of that.
No, you know, I don't necessarily agree with that, and let me tell you why. I don't agree with it. I think there's a need in society to help students who don't have access to programming that teaches them about standardized testing and how to get in schools, because a lot of areas, and we could talk about this a little bit more, but a lot of areas that aren't necessarily in higher income tax brackets don't have access to maybe the educational resources. So they do have companies that people can outsource to teach people, how to take tests and things like that. Not how to cheat, but how to take tests.
Absolutely.
But I don't necessarily know if the Key is righting a wrong, or companies like the Key are righting a wrong, because everyone doesn't have access to that type of affluence and or privilege to be able to pay for someone to pretty much float your child in, when there are students out there that are working absolutely hard to get into these schools and are disappointed, heartbroken, that they have worked on providing, trying to create the actual profile that's legitimate. To, parents have cultivated the situation like, we really want you to get into because getting into these schools could guarantee you a better life. And that's what we've built. We built that hype around that.
Yeah, we have.
And now, you have persons that we can actually question whether, if in fact their child getting into these schools was legitimate, based or different than someone else. And we could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Definitely talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. But before we talk about that, we want to talk to our Facebook family and ask you, well, first of all, thank you for tuning in, but you've got to subscribe to get the rest of the show. We know you got it on Facebook Live, and we appreciate it. But go ahead and go to www.thesphere.tv/society now and hit subscribe, or go to iTunes and Google Play. All right. You can look at our show on all the major platforms, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and anywhere else you get your podcast. You can review our show across all those platforms to help us build better content for you, and share the entire show with your family and friends right from the Sphere Podcast Network Facebook page. Hit share. Hit that button that says share. Tag your friends, tag your family, tag your enemies. Get them the information that we're disseminating. And last but not least, support our mission to bring enriched and inspiring content each and every week. You can do a one-time donation at www.thesphere.tv/donate, or get exclusive content almost daily via our Patreon tiers. You can sign up there at www.thesphere.tv/Patreon. Shout out to James Michael Greathouse.
What up, Greathouse?
What up, man? I get you the hoodie real soon. I got you, bro.
Singing to the people.
Who we got? Is it Erlene?
Hi,
Manigo. How are you? None of this surprised me. No, it doesn't.
You're right. It's not surprising. It's not surprising, Erlene. It really isn't. It's unfortunate what it is, and it really makes it that whole conversation about we are exaggerating the situation and where we're not being considered equitable. This makes it that just bolsters our case. This is situations like this. We're going to talk more about that, though. We'll talk more about that. I mean, sure. So what do you think about this? Did we talk about the $500 billion?
No, we haven't. Go ahead.
So let's talk about this $500 billion lawsuit. So here it is, you all. This is a hot topic. $500 billion lawsuit. The mom is saying that her last name is Toy. She says that mom sued scammer parents for $500 billion for taking son's college spot. She said it's one thing to exchange. Now, I mean, of course, this is all extreme because only people with money can do this, right? It's one thing to exchange a new building for your under-deserving kids' admission to college. So you get a new building versus whatever. So, your name is what gets on the building because you paid for it, but also it secures your kids getting into school. Right. But it's something totally different when you're paying money for someone to post your child's face onto a photo of an athlete and say that this is your kid. And the kid, once they get to the school, the kids, the coaches are kind of like, okay, you're here because you're playing sports. And then ideally those kids don't play sports. They're like, well, I'm not good at that or whatever. Or some of them may actually try to, but they're getting in with this profile. It's not real. Mm-hmm. Then we have the situation where, of course, the fake test scores. So her name is Jennifer K. Toy. She said she's a former public school teacher, and she's filing suit, and she's enjoined other people for the suit, and she's suing the indicted parents and the corrupt school officials. She's saying, it's called Operation Varsity Blues. First of all, that's what the whole federal case was called, Operation Varsity Blues, which I think is kind of funny. She said her son had a 4.2 GPA. He wasn't granted entry to schools involved in the scam, And she said this oversight she blames squarely on the parents who allegedly conspired with people in positions of power and authority to get their kids in over her child. Now, not that they say, now let's be clear about this. It's not that they ever said that they knew her son's name. That's not what she's alleging. What she's saying is that her son applied to schools that are actually a part of this law, a part of this bust. And it's really not the schools as a part of the bus, but the people that work at the schools. And but her child never got into any of those schools, and now we're seeing she thinks this is the reason why. What do you think about this lawsuit? Now, mind you, she's not going to get. Let's be clear, she won't get $500 billion.
No.
It's but we're talking about people that possibly could be enjoined in this suit, possibly can consider. I don't know if this would be considered how many people they can actually join in with this, but it's going to probably be a lot of people that want to say that they probably feel like they were affected by this.
Listen, for sure.
I was affected by it. No.
Listen, but that's the big deal, right? Trying to figure out how far-reaching this was, because you don't necessarily, even though with 761 students, it could be more than that when you think about it. Again, when you
he's one of many people that probably have a business like this.
Exactly.
He probably learned this business from someone.
And what's interesting is there are legitimate folks who have businesses that assist their students in test prep, in interviewing skills, and helping them navigate the financial aid process. So now for those persons who are in business to that regard, it makes their job a lot more difficult, right? That's number one. Number two, what kind of far-reaching effects? She's not gonna, like you said, she's not going to get $500 billion.
Right.
Like no, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But it speaks to the level of severity of this scandal.
It's horrible because when you really think about it, someone said, this is a quote out of thecut.com. It says, to be clear, the college admission process has been engineered to prioritize rich white kids, accelerating their inherited upward trajectory, while kids who can't afford SAT tutors or hired help or on their essays. So this person who wrote this particular article was saying, like, let's be clear, the whole system of getting kids into school was always catered toward getting some people who could afford in and weeding out others, because you can't deny people the right to education. You see what I'm saying? So that's where it kind of gets really messy, because now we're talking about how you said how deep and how far reaching has it always been this way? Take out the people doing the educational prep programs and all this stuff. Has college admissions on a whole been a situation where these standardized tests, because I'll tell people in a minute, I'm not the best standardized test taker, but put me in a room and I'm in a class all year, I am acing it, because number one, I work hard, I'm dedicated, and I'm not going to be defeated by numbers, words, or letters or thoughts. You know what I mean? But the way some of these test questions are written, I'm like, what? I remember I sat up one day, I was looking at a prep book, and I was like, what the heck is this? Like, this is not even real math. This is something else that you have to be taught how to look at this problem. It's not even real. So if you don't have the money to pay for these type of funding things, then for sure you should be enjoined in a lawsuit like that. How many people need to be a part of this lawsuit? Seriously, it can't be just her. It has to be so many more people that's going to come front and be like, you know what, it's just not me.
I definitely think it's going to be a tort. It's going to be an MDL, a mass district, multiple district litigation.
And it says, and it actually said, her lawsuit says, in quotes, names all other similarly situated as potential plaintiffs. So that means anybody could be a potential plaintiff. And I think that is really smart. And her legal team, kudos for you all, because, that lie, cheat, steal, and bribe to get your kids into school goes very counterintuitive to what people have been telling us about who gets into these colleges and who doesn't. Isn't that crazy?
Counterintuitive. Like, that's an understatement, right? Because listen, let's just call a spade a spade. You got people that you have a young lady in Ohio, right, who's doing jail time because she put a different address for her son's schooling so that he could go to school, to a better school.
And I wanted to talk about that as well. I know it was also and it's a lot of cases like that for some
A lot.
people. You know, so many people, and usually people of color,
Absolutely.
who don't live in the right zip code, who absolutely don't live in a place where they have from high income tax brackets where their their taxes are being able to pay and or fund the educational system in that particular district or school area. That have, like Hamlet Garcia, these people are serving 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, waiting for trial
For an address,
for an
yo.
address change, just so
It's
their kid
crazy.
can go to a specific school. We're not talking about paying money. We're not talking about bribing. We're talking about people are spending time in jail just so their kids can get a better education, because the way our system is set up, we don't have in certain states open zoning. Like in New York, you can go to any school that you want as long as you apply to the school. It's not like you can get pushed out. There's a lot of states that don't have that opportunity. So for the states that don't, unfortunately, you get penalized for changing addresses. And I'm like, what is the penalty for that? I'm like, seriously? I mean, jail time? If no one on this case goes to jail, I think we should, as a country, we should be upset. We should be upset,
Right, because I mean, how do you justify a mother or a father going to jail for an address, but
but they're not paying to cheat or lie. They're not paying to cheat, and I want to say cheat, meaning they're not paying anyone to change a score. Right? They're just saying, I want to just live in this district.
Yep.
And it's not denying anyone else placement into that school either, because no one can say you can't have so many schools from a particular household in a school. That's not the system we live in. Right? So I think it's just really interesting how people are going to jail for address changes, but people are spending time behind jail just so their kid can get a better education. I'm not sure, but again, they're calling that education theft. That the terminology is education theft, and they're
it should be.
You think that's education theft when you go to another school?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. Yes.
No.
it
I'm like,
should be.
wait, let's talk about it. We can talk about that.
No.
No, I don't think that's education theft.
Not
but,
at all.
But I think it's interesting how we're here now. So now let's talk about this. So what's happening is when we talk about education theft from the perspective of address changing just so your child can go into school, and bribery and I guess all other types of conspiring to get your kids into college, this is where we draw the line into busting racial stereotypes.
Absolutely.
We have to bust racial stereotypes about who exactly goes to these elite schools, because like you were saying before, people are saying that they need these type of programs so their kid can get in. But the actuality is, if this has always been going on, you haven't been not admitted in because of
affirmative action and black folks.
For affirmative
Stop
action.
playing, man.
We need to be affirmed. This is why we need affirmative action.
Facts.
Because if it's not for affirmative action, we won't ever get in, because these programs have been letting people in unfairly. And you think that when you see one or two people of color, that you assume that they're there on a free ride, and actually they're probably there, and it probably should be a lot more people there because they earn the right to be there. We definitely need affirmative action, Caitlin. We definitely need it.
Absolutely need affirmative action.
I don't know. I mean, I think that I think that it's just really interesting how we've got to a place in our society that we don't even understand, the ratification that goes on with the affirmative action and what it really means.
For sure. But we want to talk to you about an organization that's very true to their mission, and that's True Digital. They are sponsoring this portion of the show. You're online right now, and so are your customers. But the question is, how do you actively reach them? Great question. Marketing has to be a consistent journey, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way. True Digital Media Consulting can help with website development, online ads, your business reputation, and organic growth in search engines. Give us a call today to discuss a customized strategy for your business at 832-934-4436, or contact us at info@truedigitalmediaconsulting.com. Mention the Sphere to receive a free 30-minute strategy consultation. Let's push the conversation forward as True Digital Media continues to push your business forward. Let's push the conversation forward to the students.
I mean, okay, so let's talk about this. So now we're looking at, so we had the 50 defendants that are part of this case, right? 33 of them are parents. A researcher who studies race in elite university said that many Americans hear that there's college fraud associated with people of color, whether they think it's a black student getting into school solely because of affirmative action, or an Asian American student who's pushed by merciless tiger moms who are like pushing them to the meat. A lot of people think that the reason why, this college fraud is happening is because of affirmative action. It never crossed anybody's mind that college fraud is not actually happening in this situation. These people are really working hard to get into school versus people who are paying to get into school. How many times have we heard of a scandal like this on the other end? It just doesn't happen. So the narrative that black students are given an unfair leg up in admission through affirmative action is pervasive amongst critics, and it even bleeds into jobs, right? So a lot of times, and this is where we have to really erase these stereotypes. A lot of times we hear about African Americans, Asian Americans, even Hispanic Americans or Latinx, right? That if they're in a school that's considered elite, or if they get a great job, it's only because of affirmative action, not because of skill. It is not because they're qualified, and that's really unfortunate. And we know that's not to be true. We know that's not to be true. So how do we undo this unfair narrative or this unfair, I guess, stereotype?
Well, I think it takes a lot of a strong and a heartfelt and robust and concerted effort by media, by educators, by us, who are in the field, by pushing it that the people who are here deserve to be here because they're academically qualified. Not because of any program or any social handout. I think that, it's up to the professors, you and I, our colleagues, to really get behind this movement and say, no, these students are here because they deserve to be. These students are here and they got a chance that they otherwise would not have gotten because of policies that have been in place for a century, or for decades, or for more than a century, depending upon the institution, right? When you look at even with let's push the conversation. When you even look at legacy students, right? That's a big deal in these private schools. You look at the Ivies. I think I read this morning, Harvard admits more students on the legacy side than it does students on the affirmative action side.
And it's interesting that you said it, because I thought about this recently. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I looked at the amount of African American or people of color who have just recently been broadcasting, or especially on our social media platforms, have been showing that they have gotten a degree from a Harvard or a Columbia or something like that. And I realized what they're doing is not anything that we haven't seen before. Now they're just securing a legacy position for their kids to come after them, because ideally, if it wasn't for them getting in, their child behind them could not get in. So I'm like, so it's more of that securing the currency for the future, right? It's that I'm investing for me, that if I can get in, then I know my kid can get in. I mean, that's what we see, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we see. And again, it's to the detriment of other students, just because there was some fraternal, like, it really exists big time in Ivy Leagues and in private schools. This legacy thing, right? You don't see it as much in state schools because there's a lot more what's the word I'm looking for? A lot more regulation going on, because the state is looking at you and watching you significantly. But in these private institutions, in these Southern Methodist universities, Rice universities, in the Ivy League schools, right, in the Stanfords and things of that nature. These, I don't know if Stanford is private or not, but schools like that, you see that quite significantly, very recently, or even very, very prestigious and elite, what they call PWIs, predominantly white institutions. You see that as well in the Penn States, right, and in the Notre Dames, which is private, a Catholic school.
And I think that's totally okay to have a legacy. I mean, you see it in, of course, sororities and fraternities, legacy admissions and things like that. I don't think it's anything wrong with it. I think it becomes problematic if how you got in there initially, the first person, the first generation,
right?
Or if you don't teach your student how to, I guess, live up to the legacy of the school, or live up to the legacy of the family by working hard, or not just not feeling like it's the privileged way. You see what I'm saying? Like it's you didn't earn that. You know what I mean? Like I want you to feel like you earned it anyway.
So let me ask you a question. What do you, in your opinion, Kira, what do you think should happen to the students who were proven to have been recipients of this college scandal?
I think that's interesting you asked me that, because I really read an article this morning because I wanted to know what other people were thinking. There's a lot of different thought processes out there. Some people feel like, well, let's examine it, right? Every student wasn't necessarily aware of what was going on.
Right.
Some parents are some parents are overly aggressive or overzealous. I don't know what the terminology is. But
Just
they
doing too much.
Doing too much because they want to make sure that their kids get into schools they want their kids to get into it. Because some of these kids might not even be interested in these schools, but their parents are, right? They're living through their kids, and so some are saying that if the kids did not know, they should not be penalized for it. If the kids are very much aware of what's going on, and depending on what happened. So, for instance, if it was a cheating scandal with an SAT score and the kids knew about it, should the kid be kicked out of school, expelled? If they're already in school and they're in school doing well. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that? Do you expel the student? I don't necessarily know what the right answer is, because again, at the heart of it, it's the kid, it's the parent, right? The parent is the person the culprit really, that paid the money for this to happen. I don't necessarily know if the kids were making the directives. There might have been a few situations that a kid was making directive, but not all of them.
Yeah.
I really don't know, but I do know on the other end, when it's POC versus PWI, the people of color, we usually don't. The conversation is dead in the water when we're like, what's going to happen? So, they're going to get kicked out. They're going to get expelled. I don't necessarily know if it's going to turn out this way. I don't necessarily know if we're going to have a huge exodus of people getting expelled or being suspended or having to sit out a year or having to reapply. They did say a few schools were looking at those students that had been said to be caught up in this recent scandal. For those who have already graduated, they're not thinking about, they should not, a lot of schools are like, we're not thinking about revoking degrees or anything like that, because that's too much, that's too far. If they actually already went through the process and graduated, we're going to assume that they did it. They didn't cheat to go through, right? Because their parent wasn't in school with them.
Right.
So the assumption is that the only negative would happen in getting into the school.
Right. I think it's, I tend to agree with you, Kira. My personal opinion is if the student is there and they're doing well and they've showed that they have the intellectual capacity to matriculate through that organization and through that institution, I think that they should remain there. Having to prove that the student knew about it is a long road to hoe, is a difficult task that I think the Justice Department can use their resources in a different manner to really hold the parents accountable and to try to right the wrongs and hold the institutions accountable. The parents accountable, yes, for sure, but also the institutions accountable for accepting these payments and going about this process. Because again, you got to look at how deep this thing goes. But you also have it's just not a natural occurrence for this. And speaking of natural, I want to talk to my sisters out there who may be in the Natural Hair Club, and this portion of the show is sponsored by Lady Irie Natural Hair Care. Do you have a kinky or a curly style in mind? Well, Lady Irie Natural Hair Care has been a prime destination for catering to naturally kinky hair in Houston, Texas, and beyond for over 5 years. Clients come from all over the world to receive the ultimate experience for their natural hair care needs. Now, Lady Irie Natural Hair Care has been featured on media outlets including Young Black Professional Magazine, GMT, Internet Radio, The Sphere, and more. Your unique vision can be brought to life complete with helpful tips for maintaining your hair. And you'll walk into the salon with the warmest of greetings, complimentary refreshments, and knowledgeable stylists that promote total beauty from the inside out. Our goal is to unveil your kinks one curl at a time. Give the experts a call today at 832-265-3792 or book online at www.ladyirie.com. Now, when you start talking about these students, Dr. Kier, and whether or not they should be held accountable, again, to repeat myself, I don't think they should be, because I think I think more resources, the resources will be better spent prosecuting all members of the institution and the parents who are making the payments.
Yeah.
You start trying to do a witch hunt for the students it's a bad PR. It's a PR nightmare.
No, I
as
agree.
They're trying to matriculate, as long as they've proven that they're successful in college.
Yeah. Because
the hardest thing oftentimes when you've been to law school.
Yeah.
You've been to an tier 1 MBA program.
Yeah.
You went to a great private school.
Mm-hmm.
You went to a great law school. Let me say that. You went to a great MBA program, tier 1 in a great private school.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's not about the work when you get there, because 2 + 2 is 4, whether you go to Harvard or whether you go to a community college.
Right, exactly. No matter what.
The difficulty is getting in.
Absolutely.
And leveraging the network. So once they're in, if they're able to, if the student is doing the work and doing it successfully, I think that's proof enough to me, that they don't need to be prosecuted and brought into that. Let the folks who masterminded all of this, because they were 17, 18 when this happened. Could have been earlier than that. We don't know when their parents were making these payments. But again, who needs to be held even more accountable, in my opinion, is the institution. Because how far, mastermind, whose pockets were getting greased?
No, I agree with you. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. There's so many different pieces to the puzzle. I agree with that. It's hard enough for students to just, in this day and age, regardless of what type of background you're from.
Look,
like I said, school is school when you get there. It is. You have too many other things to compete with. I think the bigger conversation is, how do you erase the blemish, or how do you actually get, cure people from affluenza? This thought process of, because of who I am or because who my parents are, I know blank is afforded to me. That's privilege at the highest height. And how it, there is no vaccination for affluenza, if you're, affluenza is a disease that only applies to PWI or PW people. It doesn't apply to people of color, and so we don't get to, I guess, chill behind the the gauze of not being or having to hide behind being affluent, and it's not our fault because we lived a life that we always thought a certain way. I mean, we just don't get that. So it really is unfortunate. But let me say this though, this is where we're going to have a deeper conversation about what's going to happen at the Department of Education. Do we even have a Department of Education, is what Caitlin says all the time. But the U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos,
that's your homegirl.
I know nothing of this woman but what they tell me, right? But
That's
she's about this. She calls her voucher program the Education Freedom Scholarships. She introduced it into Congress. Was introduced into Congress by Senator Ted Cruz. Okay, Texas, and they call it a historic opportunity to expand education freedom. And it's supposed to be a situation where you get vouchers, and you can use these vouchers to get into the schools that you want to get into. The problem with the vouchers is that people are thinking that these vouchers will take money from public schools, take money from public schools, making public schools more challenging educationally. And when I say that, I mean not as competitive, and allowing people that have the vouchers to use them to get into private schools, making private schools more attractive. And so that's the same thing we're seeing on a larger scale when we look at the college situation. Is that not the same? So what they're introducing is this on the level where our children are, right?
Yeah.
Secondary school, primary school, things like that, where they're, we're trying to get them fundamentally ready for college if they choose. But now you're introducing this system in, which also it's cyclical, right? Because now we have people that are going to be trying to do whatever they can to get these vouchers to make sure their kids have an opportunity, because the vouchers in their mind, we assume the vouchers mean better. Mm-hmm. No voucher means worse.
So right, exactly. So what you're saying is, so then how do you buffer against payola, so to speak?
Sure.
Because what payola was to radio is what people are fearful of happening, and that's you pay to play. So
right.
What payola is to give the analogy, payola back in the day was, which is illegal, was DJs, record companies would pay DJs in order to on the radio station in order to get their song on air, and it became illegal because it was an unfair advantage. It was pay to play. And so we're looking at, and we're potentially with this voucher system, what's going to happen when you have affluent parents and affluent families who can do the same thing. And my thing about the voucher system is, people are saying that what they're trying to do is breed competition, right? and competition is good for capitalism and the economy. And from an economic standpoint, it absolutely is great. It helps you regulate the market, right? It helps set prices at an affordable rate when there's a lot of competition, right? When there's a lot of opportunity, but there's already opportunity for within the public schools. The issue is we have to prioritize public spending for education, and that's what Betsy DeVos is trying to do. She's trying to take away the option. Listen, Kira, you said it best. I often wonder if there's a Department of Education, because all the Department of Education does now is funnel money, or honestly, they get rid of money. There was a proposed, I want to say $9 billion cut in education from in the 2019 budget. And that's horrible, right? When education is the biggest social service in the country, right? And they've left it to states and local districts to fund education, which I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, I believe the federal government, if you are invested into your citizens and you're supposed to protect your citizens, I believe the federal government should offer some assistance district-wide or at least statewide, give a bucket of money, with an equitable algorithm or equation, a bucket of money to each state so that they can disseminate it to their local districts. By pushing for these vouchers, you're setting yourself up for the affluent to be able to pay to play, to pay to get their students in school, the kids in school, and private schools already exist. Like we don't. There's no need for more private schools or for vouchers. Private schools essentially have vouchers, right? They have wait lists. They have all of these kinds of admissions requirements, and you can meet them at a certain. Like you can meet the requirement, or you don't necessarily have to. So why make it? Because what's going to happen is a lot of these private schools, a lot of these charter schools, they're gonna cut into the private school pool of money, and then I'm gonna be frank, the white people are gonna be mad again.
Well, I think it's interesting because there was 2 articles I read on this, and one of them said that Betsy, bless her heart, was trying to make it funny, and it didn't go over too well. Which she said, she was like, I mean, this college scam is definitely making those potential students better at math. Rick has $75,000 to do this. It takes such and such. Poor taste. Poor taste. I was like, it's a bad little whatever. I'm paraphrasing. I know, but it's interesting. But she took this voucher conversation to Iowa this past week, and the Democratic Party chairman, who is Troy Price, says that Reynolds and DeVoe are working together to enact their secretive school voucher tax credit scheme.
It sounds like something off of the movies.
Yeah, Reynolds spokesperson Pat Garrett says Reynolds is open to looking at innovative ways to help public and non-public schools as well as homeschooling. Like I said again, and you mentioned this, we have to be very vigilant when it comes to we live in a very free country, and we have to be very vigilant. It's going to take everyone to keep their ears open to the conversations that are going with education, whether it's a college education, secondary, primary education. We just need to be involved in the conversation. We can't take our local elections for granted. Nope. We can't take the national elections for granted. We need to know what platforms people are running on, because again, we can't eventually we can't have a world where we're separating people based upon educational levels.
Right.
That is not a country that I want to live in. No. Because what happens if there's no diversity? You know what I mean? What happens when there's no representation for people from all sectors, not just the people that can pay? Then we have a problem.
Yeah, we
have a big problem.
We have a huge problem. And so when you look at what typically happens with the vouchers is those who can pay, can play, those who can afford, can go to it, and it disproportionately affects POCs.
Absolutely.
Point blank, period.
And I would love to carry on this conversation a little bit more in the future. I think we should just definitely circle back.
We got to get some school board members and some professionals.
Experts, on this, because this conversation it's not going to go away.
It's not.
We need to dig a little deeper to see what we can do as a society to make sure that representation is there, and that we're not being underrepresented in the right conversations. So I look forward to continuing this conversation.
So do I.
I do. So you all, thank you for tuning in for a special edition.
Hey.
A Saturday morning edition. Almost like back in the day we had Saturday morning cartoons. We had Saturday morning society now. Listen.
Saturday mornings that's a new hashtag. Saturday morning society
hashtag.
now.
And y'all need to follow us on the gram, and that's at We Are Society Now.
Absolutely.
I was speaking with you all this morning. Again, my name is Kira Laws. You can follow me on Instagram at the Modern Day Cindy. That's Cindy with an I, not a Y. It might be a new name change coming soon, y'all. I'll keep you posted. And to my far left.
Hey, you know who it is. This your man, Kalen Laws, a.k.a. Senor Wapo. And follow me on all social media platforms at Senor Wapo 713. That's SENORGUAPO 713. Holla at your boy. This is Society Now. We'll see you next time.
Society Now. We are Society Now.